morning. Welcome to an all-new and weirdly timed episode, which I love, Thursday morning episode of Props to Consider and Then Maybe Bet. I am your host. I am the paragon of virtue. I am Lou Betya. I usually do a recap of the results from last week, so I will just say this. Loss. There is the recap. Last week was a bloodbath. Got some of it back on the Contender Series. On to this week. Future forward. My guest I have wanted to work with for forever. You may say that I've had this date on my fridge for a very long time. One of the nicest guys in the community and an OG, the venerable Mike's MMA Picks. Mike, how are you doing on this lovely morning?
Doing well. It's an honor to celebrate this festive morning with you today, Lou. I appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to breaking down some fights. Got 11 fights this weekend and have a few spots I have picked out, but also excited to talk some props here. That's the reason we're here today. So looking forward to this. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate At the very least, we're going to consider them and then maybe bet them, as my legal team likes to tell me all the time. Before I ask you a few questions, want to shout out the chat. We got Mushroom here. He was here. I think he came with YouTube. He might have been here yesterday. I'm not sure. We got my guy Juicy Q in the chat. We got Shady. We got Moyes. We got Eric the Red. We got my guy Addicted to Combat, Patrick. We got Kristen. We got Jenna Marie. How are you, darling? We got my guy Zach Johnson. Thank you guys so much for spending your morning with us. So a few quick questions for Mike, since I am like the Barbara Walters of this piece. First thing that's most important, Mike, just recently sustained an injury. How are we doing in the recovery process with the leg?
Oh, I appreciate you asking, Lou. I had an MRI yesterday and went down about a week ago. Heard everything tear in my ankle. Not good. Doc thinks I have a completely ruptured ATFL, possibly CFL, and broken fibula. And long story short, I'll be on the shelf for a while, and this provides an opportunity for me as well as others to break down fights and spend more time putting out content. So it's a labor of love, really, and it keeps my eyes and my attention off of the pain and the recovery process. I also have two sons who are extremely active, so I've been doing my best to try and get them to their sporting events, etc., and live vicariously through them. So that's the other side of the story here too. So although I'm on the shelf, I am being productive. So, and part of doing this show today too, grateful to be here.
Spiritual, mental healing. I'm glad I could at least provide 1% of the process. My next question, and this is something that you and I have both spoken about in the community, both been outspoken about. You have been tracking on BetMMA tips a lot longer than me. I mean, I've only been in the space about a year and a half. I've been gambling on sports for over 20 years. But as soon as I got in the space, started tracking on BetMMA tips. And you've been doing it longer. And what to you is the importance of doing it in terms of public perception, in terms of your own learning? Like, why do you stress how important it is to be honest and to be diligent about tracking all your bets on that site?
Well, number one, accountability. Number two, I believe it's at the end of the day, it's you against you. If you're not tracking and recognizing what you're winning and what you're losing, and you're redepositing on a regular basis, that's a recipe for disaster. So number one, accountability. Number two, the competitive juices run deep in myself and as well as many others. So it's not necessarily just you against the bookies. You want to be able to keep track of what's happening. The competitive spirit runs deep. We live in a space where the stakes are high, opinions vary, and emotions run strong occasionally. So from my perspective, to have a track record, to acknowledge when you win and when you lose, it takes some chutzpah to come out after an event and post that, yes, I lost. This is where I lost. This is where I went wrong. And acknowledge it, explain it, own it, rather than sweep it under the rug. So for me, that was something. Dan Levy, by the way, back in, I believe, 2016 or so, I got a DM from him. He can attest to this. And he said, have you considered tracking your bets and your plays? And that's when I began doing it. And it's just been ever since then, over at Capper Tech and then BetMMA. There are many different sites that you can use. But the key is, I believe, if you're in this industry and you're putting out or at least offering advice,
We got some clowns in here, Mike. That we got some clowns like Big Steve,
Big Steve.
MMA.
No. I do not partake in that. I try and everything in moderation, my brother.
I do it. I do it for both of us, Mike. Don't worry.
Okay. All right. So yeah, what I was getting at is just being able to own wins and losses. Also, if you're putting out content here, it's nice to have some backbone to fall back on if people question your abilities in the industry. So the other thing is it does take some time to do this. So a few minutes every day, whenever you're entering a play, you have to go to the site and make sure it's done in real time so that the odds are accurate. And then folks can opt to tail you or fade you. And I'm not necessarily doing this for a particular group of folks. I'm doing this to keep uh, myself accountable, and it's also one of the reasons I haven't put it behind a paywall as well. In years past, I've been successful doing that, but it does take, I'll be honest, like many others, 20 to 30 hours a week of research and preparation to come to these conclusions and actually lay the lumber in certain spots. So I'd like to hear your professional opinion on it as well, Lou. What's your take?
So I've been tracking my bets in a spreadsheet, a little program that I built out because I have an IT background. So I may as well put it to good use by building something to help me with gambling, to make my parents very proud. So, but I bet multiple sports. Soccer is one of my bigger ones. NFL, college. These are some of my bigger sports. When I started tracking on BetMA tips, it was more for just like kind of public credibility. Like, all right, here's what I'm on. And last year I ended not great. So because I've been doing this a long time, I went and I looked at the results. I said, okay, well, where am I going wrong? And I actually noticed something that I wouldn't have noticed in my spreadsheets. I did the math and I started researching this, and I noticed that I was trying to cheat a lot of heavy money lines by betting in the distance props against guys from, just making their debuts. What I learned is some of these guys in the regionals, yeah, maybe their strength of schedule isn't good. Maybe their 8-0 record isn't as good as it looks like. But when you see these guys that are undefeated that really haven't dealt with adversity, just because the skill set is varied doesn't mean they're going to fold, doesn't mean they're going to give up. I'll give you an example. I was one of the very few guys I had Malarkey decision against Prado. The whole world was on the under. The whole world was on Malarkey in the distance. Prado showed some toughness. So I realized that maybe these are bets I need to avoid. And I had done some numbers as recently as July. I think the spot's come up 18 times this year, and it's gone the distance 16 of them. So learning to avoid spots, not making a bad bet, it's saving money. It's not winning, but it's saving money. And long-term, these are things that matter. So on a personal basis, I've learned stuff from BetMA tips. From a public perception, yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important that people, if we have a responsibility as content creators. I know it's small potatoes in the world, but if people take time to watch these shows, I feel that it's important that we're giving them advice that we are following themselves. These are the bets I like. Big Steve's in our chat. Big Steve will only have a few bets a card, and he tends to go heavier on them. I tend to be the same way. Some people like having 30, 40 bets. That's not my style. I don't think that's a great approach, to be honest. I'd rather keep it small and just go heavier on the spots I like. But I like that people can see like an evolution of cappers out there. So I think it's a very valuable tool. Yeah, there are ways to cheat it. We see people creating tons of accounts, betting 11 units. But I think for the most part, a lot of us try to be honest and try to use it the right way.
So, right. And I agree with you. And what I try to do is steer folks in the right direction consistently. And that's, at the end of the day, one of the most important things. If folks are consistently steering folks in the wrong direction on a regular basis and they're putting out content, that's dangerous to do that consistently. And then also to risk a massive percentage of their bankroll, or advise others to risk a massive percentage of their bankroll on a regular basis. That's a recipe for disaster. But you make some great points. I agree with you in a lot of respects. And the other thing here that must also be mentioned is there are many ways to skin a cat. So as long as you're coming out with profit on the other side of this and the ROI is there, I think that's key. So it is a way of keeping us accountable. I appreciate this. Oh, ballyhoo. Yes.
Jared is definitely somebody who doesn't like ballyhoo, hooey,
Tomfoolery as well.
Or shenanigans. None of these things are acceptable on the MMA Engine channel. Last thing, as I just brought up this topic, last thing before we move into the props, I mentioned that I have dabbled in multiple sports, even a little bit of Danish handball, maybe some ping pong. You know, Bitcoin sports books are really fun when they put up all these weird markets. Mike, what other sports are you a big fan of? Have you ever dabbled in the gambling in football, baseball, any of these other sports?
Yeah.
Lacrosse.
Occasionally. Yeah. Well, the challenge here, and I got to be honest, I think this is an important point. You have 22 folks on a football field, one ball, a referee. You've got the wind. You've got coaches making decisions. You've got the potential for injuries. I think that there's a lot of volatility in NFL and college football, and you have folks who do their homework behind the scenes. So I personally have tried to do my best to avoid those situations. Occasionally, if a prop, a reception prop, etc., will jump off the page and over under, etc. I have dabbled throughout the years in a fantasy football league. So I believe it's 16 or 17 years running. That keeps me honest. But my sole focus here is mixed martial arts, and I've stuck to my strengths. I've realized that somebody told me when I was a child, it's better to be great at one thing than good at a bunch of different things. And I know it's nice to be a jack of all trades, but personally, I've found through experience that it's better for me to just have that silo mentality and stick to what I'm good at. Because at the end of the day, this is our hard-earned money that we're risking here, and I don't want to play around with it. I'd like to win, and like to help others win as well. So that's the key here. But I have my sons. One of them plays competitive soccer. The other plays on a travel baseball team, and I'm constantly helping him get to certain places. So he's always talking to me about Aaron Judge and all these different players throughout the years. And I grew up playing a lot of these sports too. So of course, I think that just the cultural, traditional side of things lends itself to me appreciating that aspect of it. So I do watch the games, but I wouldn't necessarily make a wager on them.
Yeah. I only have like a bunch of bets in for this weekend, but that's for a different show for the NFL. And but let's get to why people are here, Mike. Let's break down some props for UFC Vegas 79.
Let's do it, baby.
If you guys are watching the show for the first time, we're going to give 3 props that aren't the main event. Then we're going to talk about the main event. And then, of course, we're going to finish with a flourish with the Yam Bag special, which we will get to at the end. Mike, what is the first prop to consider, and then maybe bet that you have for UFC Vegas 79?
All right. I'm going to start with some low-hanging fruit here, Lou. I got to be honest. One of the props that jumped off the board at me that isn't necessarily, I know prior to this we were talking about searching for dog odd props, but something that's hovering right around there. You've got Muhammad Usman and Jake Collier. Fight doesn't go the distance, sitting at -130. That was a prop that, to me, you have Muhammad Usman, who in the PFL showed us that his chin is a liability. His grappling defense, his submission defense is a liability. Yes, he's a front runner and a steamroller and is going to really push a pace, but I have concerns not only about the Muhammad Usman side, but also the Jake Collier side as well. I ended up making a play on Jake Collier at +135, a straight money line play, but I also have concerns about Jake's tendency to quit late in fights. You know, when he's faced with adversity, he's checked out in the past. And yes, he has made it to decision numerous times as well. But my thought process here is that this is a heavyweight fight that's going to be, it's going to present us with many opportunities for a finish. And to offer that to us at near evens, I hopped on that for a half unit play, and I believe that is that's my first prop that I eyed up.
I like that a lot too. I think that Collier, like the Barnett fight specifically, he exerted a lot of energy going for the finish, which you like to see in these kind of fights. At least he will. I mean, even against Sherman, when he
Chase
goes
Sherman,
for the
yeah.
finish, he will exert a lot of energy, depletes his cardio. I don't love Usman's cardio. I think it's a little better than Collier's, and I do think Usman hits really hard. So, if this fight hits the ground, I really like your prop a lot. I think a lot of energy will be expended. I'm going to go right to a plus 550 prop because that's actually the lowest one I have.
Oh.
I had to dig around in this card. I'm going to play AJ Fletcher by decision. Oh, by the way, I found you a minus 110 at Betway. So I put you in at minus 110. I think that's the best price I could see. AJ Fletcher decision at plus 550. So I think this is a tricky fight. I think the line is still a little wide. Brian Battle has had 2 explosive sub 1 minute finishes at the UFC level and his loss to Renat. I mean, Renat just looks like a future champion at this point. It's a stylistic nightmare. But this fight's interesting to me. So on the Fletcher side, he's at Factory X now. So he's training in elevation because the big knock I've had on Fletcher is not his toughness. It's been his cardio. The third round against Lusa was incredibly hilarious and sloppy. And he tried to fight through it. But Lusa's another guy who's incredibly tough, pretty good cardio. So that third round was just a battle of wills. I think Fletcher can at least have 10 to 12 minutes of strong cardio here. He also has a grappling advantage. He can get Battle down. Can he hold him down? I don't know. But he should have the cardio that if Battle gets up, mat return, get him up, keep throwing him down. Both guys have been super durable. I mean, Fletcher got finished, or maybe Fletcher's never been finished. One of them got submitted like 5 years ago. That's the only finish they have on their record. Mm-hmm. So if it stays on the feet, if Fletcher doesn't have any success getting him down, I do think Battle has a striking advantage, but I don't think it's a huge pronounced striking advantage. I think Fletcher's more than capable to be all right on the feet here. He's a minute winner. He can get it against the cage. What I worry about with this bet, I feel for this bet to hit, Fletcher has to win the first 2 rounds. Because the third round, we've seen Battle's cardio be really good. We know he's going to let loose and go for it on the feet. And it could be a really bad look for Fletcher if he's just eating shots. We just saw this in the Contender Series. Somebody that tired after 2 rounds of grappling got 10-8'd. So I worry about that for this bet. However, I'll take my chances that Fletcher can win the first 2 rounds, can initiate the grappling, can just eat up the clock. And Mike, people sometimes say these fights are boring when a guy just goes for a takedown and lays on him in the third round. Well, when you have a guy by decision and he's up 2-0, that's not boring at all. Keep doing it, just like Malarkey. Just keep laying on him. You lay on him till the ref tells you otherwise. Let the ref worry about it. So I'm going to play AJ Fletcher here for plus 550, which I think is a pretty wide decision line for 2 guys that are very durable.
Right. Okay. I hear what you're saying. We have to pay attention to the scales here tomorrow. You saw Gabe Green last time out, the way that Battle has this sneaky power, man, especially in close too. That's the other thing that stuck out to me. And also, you listen to Brian Battle's pre-fight interview, and he's talking about, yes, I have a 10-inch reach advantage over AJ Fletcher, but AJ Fletcher's been dealing with that in most of his matchups. He comes into these fights without a credentialed wrestling background, but Fletcher has phenomenal, at least takedowns, and the way he's able to close distance. His frame, it's freakish. He's very, very explosive. He has, if you were to have a prototype of a mixed martial artist, he has a lot of tools and intangibles that are what I like to see. He does get hit a lot though. And when the cardio starts to fail him, he can get lit up like a Christmas tree. And I do have concerns, Lou, about his scar tissue. He's been split open in a number of fights, the Semmelsberger bout as well. So I have concerns regarding a possible doctor stoppage at some point, but I hear you. I think that is, when you consider the odds that you just proposed, that is something definitely to make
I don't know
yourself
if you
aware of.
were I don't know if you were ever a fan of very old school wrestling, but the legendary Gordon Soley would call it the Crimson Mask.
Oh,
He's
yes.
sporting the Crimson Mask right now.
You know what's interesting? I've tweeted a couple of times that the octagon is painted a crimson red, and I believe one of those tweets ended up on the broadcast during an event recently. So excellent use of the word crimson.
You're getting a lot of tweets on air, and I'm always happy when you or when I see you just mentioned Dan Levy. Like I'm always excited when I'm like, I'm friends with that guy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It,
To this day, I don't know. I don't know how it happens. I don't. No one's ever explained to me how it happens, but I'm grateful for it.
I will
Every
never. I
time
can
it happens.
guarantee you, I will never get a tweet on air if they've gone there. Never, and that's probably for the best. Some
We'll
of my
see.
tweets.
We'll see. I'll
I
hope for
prefer
it.
to focus on the comedy aspect of it, more than anything else. So,
Gotcha.
but let's get to the next prop you have for us, Mike.
All right. All right. I'm gonna throw one out there that may catch you off guard, but Ricardo Ramos, round one plus 700. That's something that jumps off the page. You look at Ricardo Ramos's back taking ability. It is it's his strength. He's done it in many previous fights, and he's going to have to corral and have Charles Jourdain make a mistake for this to happen. But I believe that if Ricardo Ramos is unable to get this done in the first round, his cardio will likely fall off of a cliff inside of the apex. And I have concerns here. I picked Ramos to win, but it's either Ricardo Ramos round one, or I could see round three Charles Jourdain. Do you have that the odds handy for Charles Jourdain round three?
I
Let's
do.
see. Maybe
I
somewhere
do.
there.
I have all of it up right now. No method. I see. Wow, these odds are all over the place. So I
Okay.
see some plus 800s. I do see a plus 1100 on Unibet, and
Okay.
I see a. I have never used my bookie, but I see a very random plus 1169, which
Hmm.
is I think somebody's gotten into the cough syrup over there
Well,
to put that random number up for round three. So you like the
gotcha.
Jordan in round three also.
I was going to
You
say,
can do multiple props, by the way. Multiple props on the show are
okay.
fun.
Yeah, to protect yourself, I'd do Ricardo Ramos round one and Charles Jourdain round three. I believe that puts us in a solid position here. I personally played Fight Doesn't Go the Distance at minus 125. I think that that's a solid play for a half, risking a half unit. You watch the Lerone Murphy fight, you see what happened to Ricardo Ramos. You watch the Said Nurmagomedov fight. You also watched Ricardo Ramos falter. Again, he's not doing this camp at Team Alpha Male, which is another cause for concern here. He's a dog. He will fight hard for a few minutes, and in a sense, I liken him to Amir uh, Makwan Amir Khani
Mr.
is reminiscent.
Finland.
Yeah, yeah. That Arnold Allen, I remember going to Warder in that during that fight, the Makwan Amir Khani Arnold Allen fight. That went back and forth, and they were all over the octagon there. But Ricardo Ramos, the way he falls off of a cliff late in fights is a cause for concern. I know the Bill Algeo fight, that told me a lot too. And Bill Algeo is a tough out, and he was able to ground Algeo numerous times. I just don't see him being able to do that and maintain his cardio against Charles Jourdain. I think that it's going to come at a cost. He's probably had to do a cost benefit analysis in the lead up to this matchup. And is he going to try to grapple heavy here and get takedowns and rinse and repeat against a fighter who's very explosive? I was at Charles Jourdain's a couple of previous fights of his, one against Shane Burgos, where we saw him come on late. And then also I saw him fight Kron Gracie, where he fought a perfect fight there. He did not get caught up in Kron's grappling, and a lot of that had to do with Kron. Honestly, Kron was just marching forward like a zombie. Had
That was
nothing.
a disaster.
Yeah, I hope you weren't on Gracie in that fight.
I think I had a small poke on Gracie round one. because I
Okay.
felt like that was his win. I think they gave me like plus 600. So I thought the win equity, that was his money line, I felt.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and also, Mike, sometimes it's nice to know you've lost a bet in 5 seconds because I knew that bet was done. I'm like, all right, next.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Some fighters will go into a state where they're just thinking about surviving and they're not thinking about winning the fight. We've seen that against was it Takashi Soto? There have been others where they'll just constantly fight the hands. They won't try to escape a position, and then your fight doesn't go the distance. Ticket is toast, and that's a frustrating feeling. Also, I like watching fights who are willing to fighters who are willing to go out on their shield. And Charles Jourdain's one of those fighters. I know he's gone to a decision a number of times, but then you have Ricardo Ramos, who I believe the other thing is he's had over a year layoff here too. So, and he came in at 154 pounds for a featherweight bout last time out against Austin Lingo in a match that he could have steamrolled Austin Lingo, Ricardo Ramos. But here he is. He says the weight cut's not an issue. And I must mention your previous bet that you made on AJ Fletcher. We have to see battle on the scales. He came in at 173 pounds in his last fight. So
And the line swung after that. A lot of money came in on the Gabe Green side after that.
Haven't seen a fighter look that bad on the scales, but then look what happened. Gabe Green comes in, tries to swarm battle and gets put out. So
it's funny. Like we're talking about looking bad on the scales. And I think that this is one of those things I think people look too deep into, like, oh, he was bad on the scale. Unless you go in with the notion of need to see them on the scale. There are some fighters that but then you have guys like Jose Aldo who always look terrible. They always look drained. And then they hydrate well. And the next time you see them, they look like specimens, like the most perfect specimen ever. So sometimes I think people read into it too much. And I think with the battle fight, it's a great example of, yeah, he looked terrible. When the fight started, when he walked out, he had filled up again. He looked very healthy. So also, if you're winning in 21 seconds, maybe you don't need cardio. Maybe cardio is, can fall to the wayside a little bit. But Jack has stolen my next prop. So I'm just going to use this one now.
Okay, let's hear it.
Dan Ige's submission at plus 1,600.
Whoa.
Now, it's been a while since Ige had a sub. But he has subs at the UFC level. His grappling is decent. He's not going to have a grappling advantage. So let me just get that out of the way. His grappling is decent. His takedown defense is not great, but his grappling is decent. He's tough. Mitchell is not a huge finisher. He's fine just kind of being positional, scrambling, winning minutes. So you have to think that a lot of this fight will happen on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one angle that I always like is when you have a guy that I think has decent jiu-jitsu and decent submissions, especially chokes, like Dan Ige, against a guy who is coming off being submitted. There is a mental aspect to this. Is Mitchell going to worry about this kind of thing? Because as soon as this hits the ground, these guys are professionals, Mike, but there's got to be a PTSD factor.
All right.
There's always a factor.
Another fighter, you have a fighter who's also contemplated retirement as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, everybody says that after a loss, but, and I point to, I know this is going to a whole different stylistic fight, but we just saw Vicente Luque coming off a brain injury.
Yeah.
And he fought a little more passive style than usual. He was happy to win minutes against the cage. He was happy to stay out of big striking exchanges because once you get in the cage, there is that instant like, oh God, like the last time I got hit, did not end well for me.
Right.
And I wonder, again, this is plus 1,600, Mike.
Yeah.
If this is plus 500,
What could go wrong?
Well, at plus 500, I'm never contemplating this bet.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're asking me at plus 1,600, do I think it has meat on the bone? For a fight that I think will be fought on the mat, absolutely. So that's really the explanation. This is an odds play versus anything else. But if you told me this is going to be 15 minutes on the feet, I'm never betting it. And could Ige catch him in a front choke if Mitchell's going for a takedown? I don't know, because I think Mitchell's entries I think he's smart. He's good at working you against the cage and then getting you down. Like he doesn't really blindly dive in. But the flip side is, I don't think he has the striking where Ige has to respect it. Ige knows the takedowns are coming.
Right.
So it's not like Ige's worried about getting knocked out.
Yeah,
So I think
it's
he
such an
can
interesting
beat it.
fight.
I think it's a great fight, and I just like Dan Ige a lot too. So like, I hope he wins. But at plus 1600, I was willing to take small puck.
Mhm. And the other
So
thing we have to mention is you talked about Bryce Mitchell's striking and how it's really set up by the threat of the wrestling, and then you also have Dan Ige who can crack. I think that's an understatement. Um, Personally, I'd like to see Topuria versus Dan Ige at some point. I believe that would be a competitive fight as well. But great prop.
So
Wow.
let's get to your third and final before we get to the main event. By the way, we got 35 people watching live on a Thursday morning. Thank you guys
Okay.
so much. Please go follow Mike's MMA Picks on YouTube. Give him a sub. He's one of the good ones. Follow him on Twitter. Know who he here.
Yes, the third prop of the event that I have an eye on here. You look at Hannah Goldie, right? And she's struggled inside of the octagon. I think that would be an understatement. She struggled against subpar competition. She got dropped and finished by Molly McCann. She's out there losing to Belbita and beating the likes of Miranda Granger. Man, now she's dropping back down to 115 pounds. She's carrying a lot of extra muscle. She's going to come in here against Mizuki Inoue and look to grapple, look to push a pace. And I have concerns for Hannah Goldie in this spot. But I also look at the other side of the fight here. And Mizuki Inoue is coming off of a 3-year layoff. She just went the distance with Amanda Lemos. And this is a fighter who has great takedown defense, great head movement, is Sarah Longo trained, although she's spent the past couple of years in Japan for this fight. And she had suffered a knee injury back in 2020. This is Mizuki Inoue. This fight, I do see it go in the distance. That the odds for that, I believe, are around minus 260. But if you do want to chop some of that meat down, minus 130 for Inoue to win by decision. I believe there might be better odds if you hunt around. Are you able to pull up Mizuki Inoue to win via decision?
I'm one step ahead of you, buddy.
Thank you.
I'm always prepared. Inoue decision is, I see a minus 125 hanging out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that might not be what you're looking for. But personally, when I broke down this fight, I know we're dealing with a few-year layoff, but also Hannah Goldie, in my opinion, is one of the lower-level fighters in the UFC. Doesn't pose many threats. I believe she submitted Emily Whitmire. And where's Emily Whitmire these days?
Whitmire?
Yeah. I haven't seen her compete recently. And Inoue at minus 130, you're talking about a fighter who, what's her money line right now? Inoue, let's see.
315.
315. Okay. So you're getting close to plus odds on a decision prop in a fight where Mizuki Inoue, I believe she doesn't pack a heavy punch, but I believe that she's going to come out of the other side of this fight victorious. That would be my other prop. I don't necessarily go out of my way for these long shot props, but this is, in my eyes, one of the safer props out there. So minus 130 on Inoue to win via decision would be one of the props I'd be eyeing up.
I got a minus 125 for you here on Unibet that I'll throw in for you. Mike, the fun of the show for me is when I have guests on like Levy, who we've mentioned, who don't typically bet props, because I like when you have to go a little out of your comfort zone and say, okay, like, and just look at some different angles here as to how to approach these fights. So I love that. And as much as I tell the guests, oh yeah, put these crazy props up, our goal is still to make the viewers money. And if you feel strongly about a prop that's minus 120, I'm not one to tell you otherwise.
Okay.
My goal is to make people a lot of money with a small stake for a crazy prop that I think at least there's value on it.
Right. I know Inoue by decision is not the sexiest prop. I acknowledge that, but I also think that it has a high potential of hitting.
I also, and I think you and I can both speak from experience. And I think our friend John Stargarian, who is telling me don't promote tea on Twitter right now, because I said, hey, bring your hot beverage. I think he would agree that what could go wrong betting a minus 300 women's MMA match with a fighter that's had a 3-year layoff? What could go wrong?
Oh boy.
Just
Oh
take the
boy.
money line.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll be honest. Just a quick segue. The volatility, the transformation that we've seen from fight to fight. Go back to Tamiris Vidal, a fighter who her regional tape looked horrific.
Very bad.
Horrific.
Very bad.
Yeah. And then she came in there and mollywops Ramona Pasquale with the
Whose
body
regional
shot.
tape was worse.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So from fight to fight, you never know what's going to end up happening, especially with lower level women's mixed martial arts. And you look at a fight also on the card. If I'm not sure if you saw Rendon's tape, not very impressive either. Oh boy.
No, it's limited, but it's weird because when the matchmakers make these kind of fights, there's two things that are weird about this. You usually want the opener to be, the pace setter, like make it exciting.
Right.
When I think excitement, Tamiris Vidal does not immediately come to mind.
Correct.
And then the other thing I look at is, okay, well, narratively wise, shout out to George Gennaro, the king of Narrative Nation. Who do they want to win? And I can't imagine they're looking at Tamiris Vidal and say, oh yeah, let's market her. Like, let's push her to the stars. It's very odd. Mike, I feel like we're in a weird transitional period now where you're seeing people get taken from the Contender Series in a couple of different weight classes. You're getting the women at 115, the women at 125, and basically any heavyweight, because they're trying to cycle out the old and bring in the new. I think like the guys like Collier, and we saw Chase Sherman's gone. They're really trying to cycle out some of these heavyweights that have been on the roster for years, because now they get paid a lot more just to show up. So it's cheaper labor, but it's also fresh faces and fresh matchups. And I think that I don't think Tamiris Vidal is long for this division. I don't think Rendon is long for this division. Hannah Goldie is not long for this division. And if Inoue doesn't stay healthy, I don't think she's long for the
right. Inoue is only 29 years old. And the other thing about Rendon, if you watch the Invicta fight, she's introduced to the crowd as a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter. And meanwhile, she can't land. I believe she landed a takedown in the last 30 seconds of the fight and couldn't get anything going. It's fascinating how it's unfolding. But hey, I'll be tuning in. That's a guarantee. You can count on me to do that.
All right. I will get to my third prop. And strangely enough, now I'm waiting for FanDuel to do the combo round 2, round 3 here. So I just put what the odds are for each. Strangely enough, out of the 3 bets, I think this has the best chance of hitting. And you're going to get plus 1,200 and plus 1,400 for this. That's Dan Argueta, round 2 sub and round 3 sub. So I don't know what the combo is going to be. Let's guess plus 600 range for just having both of them. And I'll keep this breakdown brief. I think on the feet, Miles Johns is being a little underrated here. I think Argueta is hittable. I think Miles Johns is athletic. He's fast. He hits very hard. Do I have concerns about his cardio? Yes. I think his wrestling is a little underrated here too. And I think early on in this fight, he might stuff some of Argueta's takedowns. But I don't think he can stuff them for 15 minutes. And I think Argueta's shown pretty good durability. He can get out of the first round. And as this fight goes on, I've been working on some phrases for you, just so you know. As the lactic acid starts building up in Miles Johns, I'm pulling out like Gorilla Monsoon 80s wrestling stuff. His cervical vertebrae will not be able to take all the takedowns attempts. And I do think Argueta starts getting him down. I think I should mention this. I think this price is wide. This is a recency bias line for Argueta, who, because of the Ronnie Lawrence fight, I think this line started out wide. He's a Twitter darling this week. I tend to be nervous when I see a lot of Twitter, saying they're betting one guy and then I don't see the line moving. That always gives me a little bit of pause when I see that line resistance. But I do think that as this fight goes on, I think Johns will start to tire. The round 2 is plus 1,200. The round 3 is plus 1,400. You can play them both. You can wait for FanDuel as they do those round combos. But I do think eventually Argetta gets this to the mat. I do think, especially with the bad taste in his mouth with the Ronnie Lawrence fight, I think a definitive finish here is really what he needs to launch his career. He's pretty young. I think he's 30. He's in peak condition.
Oh yeah.
Am I wrong? Is he? I
Nope.
thought he was 30.
Yep, right around then. Yep. And then you also, I mean, the Ricky Tercios fight. It's hard to. I like where your head's at. The Ricky Tercios fight was a tough to get out of my head. That performance. But hey, they went tooth and nail. You could see that Argetta's willing to dig deep and can make it to the final bell. And I do see Miles Johns coming out of the gates hot, and he's a very explosive fighter. We've seen that many times. But also he can get caught. Like Mario Bautista caught him and others. And I think that the longer this does go, that Argetta should pull away late if that's what's happening. And then also, if there's scrambles on the mat, eventually they should be very taxing for Miles Johns.
I think an interesting pivot here also is if you like the Miles Johns side, I like the round 1 KO. If you want to pivot away from the Argetta subs, and if you're going to bet Argetta, I think he's a decent live bet spot. You're probably going to get plus 110 after 1. If Johns wins the first, I mean, obviously you might lose this line. Argetta might take him down in the first, and then you lost the number. But it's not a bad play. If he can't get takedowns in the first, you're going to get him at plus odds after 1. And I do think he will have the cardio to go on. I mean, even against Damon Jackson, he took that fight on less than a week notice. Looked decent against a guy who I think is vastly underrated in the UFC, of a true veteran in Damon Jackson. So
I agree.
But we are going to get to the main event now. And this is an exciting main event. I don't know if this is an exciting main event for what we would refer to, of course, as casual fans, as the name value maybe isn't there for the general populace. But if you're a fight fan, I think this is an excellent main event. You got Mateusz Gamrot against Rafael Fiziev. I don't want to say grappler versus striker. I don't think it's as simplistic as that. But we do have a guy, Mike, in Fiziev that has shown very good takedown defense, especially against RDA. Against the guy named Mateusz Gamrot, who's been in 5-round fights, who's tons of experience, has grappling equity, decent striker. Mike, how do you see this one going?
Yeah.
And what do you like here?
I appreciate you setting the stage, Lou. That's a phenomenal job.
That's what I do.
Excellent. Man, you watch Fiziev's takedown defense, and it reminds me of a spring that's about to uncoil. He can do it time and time again for the first couple of rounds. I believe that that Gamrot has not been hit clean at a level of Rafael Fiziev's striking. You watch, Dariush was able to completely floor Gamrot. Gamrot got right back up, stayed in the fight, kept moving forward, and was able to eventually, after a tremendous amount of effort, right the ship. Thanks, Professor Chaos. You watch Gamrot, and I have a lot of respect for him, the way he performed in that Arman Sarukian fight. By the way, I had him losing to Arman Sarukian. I know he put up a good fight. I think the judges got that one wrong.
You know who was upset about that? My bankroll was upset about that decision.
Man, yeah, that was a tough one.
But I rewatched it.
Yep.
And I can make the case for 3 to him. Some of those rounds were close, and the optics, he had the optics as the fight went on. He looked better. He looked like he wasn't landing clean, but he certainly looked the fresher fighter. And I think that's the optics were in his favor.
Sarukian's cardio was definitely tested there. And the other thing was the body kick of Sarukian. Sarukian grew up, he was a hockey player, right? And then he made the transition to martial arts. Fiziev hits much differently than Arman Sarukian. And if he's able to unload on you and snipe, that is a cause for concern. I don't rate Gamrot's striking very highly. I believe that his real threat is the wrestling, and Fiziev has to know that. And ATT has a great game plan for Gamrot in this spot, I have no doubt. But the way I'm eyeing this fight up, I did make a 1-unit play on Fiziev at -150, but I also understand that there are ways that this fight has, if you look at implied probability, what's the likelihood of these things happening. And I do see some value in a couple of spots here. If you are on the Gamrot side, if you take him via decision, I believe his decision I saw plus 285 on the board. That's one way of going about this. I think it's going to be tough to finish Fiziev, especially early. The guy is like a spring out there. He will just bounce right back up. And watch his fight against RDA. RDA's turned into a wrestler, and that fight late, you saw he was able to dig deep. The fight against Gaethje, very impressive, controversial decision there as well. So that's one play. And then the other side of this fight, if you did want to play Fiziev by KO TKO, right before I hopped on, I saw it at plus 190. So that's another side of the fight that you could look into. There is a world in which Fiziev wins a decision here. I acknowledge that. That was one of the reasons I ended up just playing the straight money line at minus 150. But I do see those other avenues as possible outcomes here. And both of those spots, I believe, do provide substantial value. But that's the way I see it. Lou, how about you?
So I'm on the Fiziev side here. I do think that at Gamrot, it's not like he's shooting takedowns the whole fight. He does want to keep it on the feet. I think it's just his nature. I think no matter how much in camp they're going to stress, you got to get this to the ground. Fighter's going to fight. He's going to fight the way he knows, which is at least early to keep it on the feet. And this is going to end up being a humongous mistake. Now, when watching the RDA fight, now I had an in the distance prop, so I was happy.
That was close.
was it a premature stoppage?
Possibly.
It's debatable. I think it was on rewatch. But that being said, I think it was coming. So I think they stopped it early, but I think RDA was in a real bad spot. But his cardio still looked good. RDA is just legendary. We don't know Fiziev's mindset after the Gaethje loss, but I feel like he needs a statement here. Because if he loses this fight, he's not going to headline an event for it might be years. He's going to really plummet here. And I do think he can stuff the takedowns early, and he's going to wear on the body of Gamrot. He's going to wear on it. He's going to sap his cardio. And I do think that Fiziev gets him out of there. And I think this is a very reasonable price. Is on FanDuel, which I need to update and say this is on FanDuel.
Let's see.
Fiziev round 3-4-5 KO is plus 600 odds.
Wow.
Now, could he get a flash KO early? I don't think so. Because I do think that's when Gamrot's going to have at least can eat up minutes going for takedowns against the cage. I do think this is a tactical battle early. There's going to be a feeling out process. So I don't see a flash KO here. If it is a KO, it's going to be late. I'm worried because, Gamrot's never shown like he's not a durable guy, but I think he's never faced a guy who kicks as hard as Fiziev does. So
right, that's a vulnerability on his side. And I must mention this, Lou. You asked what did Fiziev learn from that loss to Justin Gaethje. I can tell you exactly verbatim what he said in an interview. He said, "I learned to cook humble pie." What do you?
I mean, I can tell you right now, humble pie is not a delicious meal.
Yeah.
Much like the steel cage does not taste like chocolate. Humble pie is not a dessert I would like to be served on a regular basis. But we have gotten to the last part of the show. Still got 35 of you watching live. Thank you guys so much. If you've never watched the show before, number one, shame on you. Watch it every week. And number two, we're going to talk about the Yam Bag Special. Now, Yam Bag Special is a point deduction. We are betting on a fight where you can have a point deduction. They're plus 2,000 odds. DraftKings has them. BetMGM has them. Mike, quick trivia for you. There's been one fight that I have ever seen where the Yam Bags was not plus 2,000. It was plus 1,800. It was a heavyweight fight. Can you guess what fight it was? I'll give you a hint. One of the guys is no longer with the UFC. And it was recent, last couple of years.
I'm going to guess Chase Sherman.
No, but that's a good guess.
Man.
It was America's sweetheart, Greg Hardy. Against Marcin Tybura. And the problem is Hardy.
Oh my God. I was going to say Marcin Tybura. but
Hardy
that was
didn't
was
last
still a
long enough for
finish.
him to cheat. If he made it to the stool, he might have pulled out an inhaler, or he might have cheated, but he didn't get us there. But I still thought it was pretty funny. So, Mike, I have now I'm a Yambag professional. Wheezy and I, Uncle Wheezy. Uncle Wheezy and I are the co-chairs of the Yambag Institute
Great
here
work.
in Lucerne, Switzerland, where I'm remotely from right now. That's why the lamp in the background, it's IKEA.
It's beautiful.
Trust me, I know there's a lot wrong with that sentence. That was the point of it. Mike, got to say it on air, man. Got to do it for me. One time, dealer.
Yambag. Hey.
Yes!
As
long as Brady, pay me.
As long as there is delusion, there is hope. That's how I see this, and we'll head right into it. The Yambag special, I believe, none other than the Jake Collier Muhammad Usman bout. I believe if the books are out there, they should probably be hanging a plus 1,200. I believe that's a playable line for the Yambag special. What typically have you cashed this at? Is there a specific line that I know you mentioned plus 2,000?
It's always plus 2,000 by default.
Okay, I've never gone searching for the Yambag special line.
You want to know the last one I hit?
What?
Ed Herman against Zach Cummings.
Wow. And what, out of the percentage of fights that take place in the UFC, what percentage do you lay the lumber on the Yambag special?
I typically only do one a night.
Okay.
Unless I'm up. And look, these are $5 bets. I can't track them because literally BetMGM Tips doesn't let me. I would track this because I'd love to know. But I can tell you right now, I have hit more than 1 out of 20 in the 18 months I've been doing.
Like
I've hit I've hit 5 of them. So
wow.
I think I hit my favorite one ever was the Nchukwu. Was it Negramanu, and was it Nchukwu?
Yeah, Negamarianu against Kennedy's Nchukwu.
And he poked him in the eye 7 times, and I'm just screaming like, I'm not. I have not cursed on this show. I don't plan on changing that, but I may have let out some expletives, and I said take the redacted point, and finally he did, and I was like, and then I had like Pepe, Sylvia, and a couple other people had bet the draw, and I really thought I think Wheezy bet the draw too, and I thought they were going to get there, and that should have been a draw. So I feel like they should be aggrieved that plus 6,600.
Wow. So there's opportunities to be had, but yeah, I'd go with the Collier Usman Yambag special. How about you? Did you have one already circled on your refrigerator?
Oh, as soon as I saw this fight, it's tailor-made for this show. I mean, that's the kind of fight that exists for a Yambag special. But what I want to tell you is, so we actually have things we look for on this show in terms of like what I liked, how I liked. Because look, as goofy as it sounds, it's really like any other prop. So how do you find value in it? So one thing that we've noticed is you want guys that are southpaw versus orthodox, the open stances, and guys that throw leg kicks. Like I had the Benoit Saint-Denis Moises fight, and Saint-Denis cracks him twice low in a minute because those open stances the bagel region is more open for open stances. I also like, a guy with bad cardio against a wrestler, because then the cage grabs come into effect. Of course, the UFC has decided to never penalize against cage grabs now, but the concept is the same. So the only fights on this card that are southpaw versus orthodox, true southpaw orthodox, not switch, is Argetta Johns, which I thought about, and Bryce Mitchell and Ige. And Bryce Mitchell looks like he loves to cheat. But I can't get past Usman Collier here. Yeah, it doesn't check all the boxes, but Mike, what does the third round of this fight look like? Do you think is it high level?
Sheer exhaustion should take place.
Do both of them have grappling?
I'll be honest. Collier's looking svelte, according to his Twitter account. Looks like he shed 20, 30 pounds.
He had the shirt on.
He did. Yes. So pause. We'll pause. We see.
Saw this with Derek Lewis. We know this trick.
The scales don't lie. Yeah. We'll see what happens. But I will say that you heard Collier in his interviews. He spent, I believe, 4 to 6 weeks bringing in 300+ pound wrestlers to get him against the cage. Now, is one camp going to make a difference here? Not necessarily, but I believe that you consider Junior Tafa's takedown defense to Jake Collier's. Jake Collier's should be a little bit better here. But granted, we saw against Budai and others that Collier can be a fish on the mat. But I also think that, man, that there's a possibility, there's a world where Collier ends this fight via submission. That's something that I see happening too. So, man, yes, exhaustion should set in. Probably, I'm going to guess at this 4.5 minute mark for Muhammad Usman, probably even before that.
All right. So I've been doing this graphic as we've been talking, and I would like to just pull up that.
Multitasking.
I mean, it's already, most of it's built, but I see my guy Fight Talk Only, who does way better graphics than me. This is why I got into programming and not graphic arts, because I don't know what I'm doing. But I just want to get something up here. I like to screenshot this and post it to Twitter so that people know. But these are the props that you and I have cooked up. Yam Bags is obviously the same, both in the Fiziev KO. I like the late round props. I have Argetta and Ige subs. Ige sub, obviously, is just, I'm playing a crazy line here. Fletcher decision. And we have Mike is on the Usman fight, doesn't go the distance. He even just said Collier's got sub potential. 2 ways to play the Ramos Jordan fight and the Inoue decision at a very reasonable -1. Does this all look right to you? You're not bound to this legally. I just want to know if it looks right to you.
I got you. No, it looks correct on both sides. Thanks for whipping it together quickly.
Well, I mean, I already had mine typed in, so really it was pretty easy,
Okay.
Even for a normal human being could have done it in 10 seconds. It only took me 3 hours. So we have reached the end of the show. Mike, this has been one of my favorite shows ever. You are a pleasure. I love the Mike Tyson background. I remember losing the Sandman multiple times as a kid. Could not get past him. And then Super Macho Man was a jerk.
Wow. Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I grew up playing that game, as sure as you did as well. Now, did Soda Popinski cause you a lot of problems?
No, for whatever reason, I had him timed perfectly. Bald Bull gave me a lot of problems.
Yeah, Piston Honda.
No, the Bald Bull charge was like the worst.
You had to play, I believe, Bald Bull twice.
Yes.
He got better the second time around. But I ended up beating this many times. Great game. Took a lot of practice. And my sons now play the game. We dust off the old NES. It's incredible. It still works. How many years later? 1988, I received it as a Christmas gift. So it's nice to have that. By the way, those old game cartridges are now starting to be worth a lot of money. So
Zelda's worth, like, the gold Zelda is worth like just an insane amount of money. Fun fact, my parents gave me a birthday present. They gave me the game Kung Fu. I
remember that.
I had not yet received a Nintendo. So as a 7-year-old, I was like, or I wasn't 7, I was 10. I'm old.
Okay, we're right around the same age.
I'm 1977. The math is, I don't know anymore. But I remember thinking my parents were like literally the worst parents in the world. Like, why would you get me a game? Like, I couldn't put it together that they actually had the Nintendo and they had waited till the next day to give it to me, which, by the way, is cruel. It's cruel and unusual punishment to do that. But yeah, then I saved up enough money for Sega Genesis when it came out. Got Gold Max and Altered Beast. And
Altered Beast, yes.
But anyway,
and they had
that could be a whole other show, by the way.
Or Buster Douglas Boxing was the
for Genesis. Yes,
Genesis. Yeah,
it was supposed to be Mike, a version of Mike Tyson, and then he lost, and then by the time the game came out, I think Buster Douglas had lost the belt. So it's pretty funny that he had lost. Guys, thank you so much in chat. You guys have been really active. You're awesome, Mike. Tell the people where they can find you and what you're working.
Sure. Lou,
are we doing Saturday morning? Are you doing Saturday morning show?
I do. I typically do a Saturday morning show. Now that I've been on the shelf with this injured ankle, I've bumped up a lot of my content. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike's MMA Picks. You can also follow me on YouTube at Mike's MMA Picks. I also have been putting out a tremendous amount of free content. So there's nothing behind a paywall this year. At some point, I possibly may put something behind a paywall. Very, very small, though. Very small. But for now, free plays and just pushing out a ton of content. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the dialogue on a regular basis. This is a great opportunity to showcase folks in the industry, and also just have multiple perspectives, because I think having a silo mentality can be an issue also. If you don't have outside interactions, folks may be pointing out, you know what, Mike, you might be missing something here. So I appreciate this, and you really opened my eyes today, Lou. I appreciate you. One other thing, I will be doing a show on Saturday, but it's going to be something I do after the weigh-ins and on fight morning. So that will be my final verdict. But I did put out yesterday evening the entire card, all 11 fights, breaking them down in about 45 minutes or so, and just a labor of love.
Go check out Mike's video. I'll only say one show that I'm doing because I saw somebody mention do more soccer to me, so I'm a big soccer guy. I had a show I debuted last week, 11 a.m. Friday, called Cup of Coffee in the Big Time.
Ooh,
I do the Macho Man. I do the whole, the Macho Man gear, all that stuff. I give the 3 best bets I have for the weekend in soccer, UFC, at college football, and pro football. It was a fun show last week. We'll be doing that every Friday morning before the weigh. Well, I can't say before the weigh-ins, before these weigh-ins, but obviously it's going to be variable depending on where the fights are. But I'm going to try to stick to 11 a.m. every Friday morning. It's a half an hour show. It's 12 bets. Again, much like yours, Mike. Efficient. 12 bets, half an hour, and some good times. What more do you want? Guys, good luck this weekend. We'll be back in 2 weeks with, I have no idea because I haven't booked that far ahead. So Grant Dawson and Bobby Green. Yes, but I have no idea who my guest is for that week.
Gotcha.
So guys, good luck with your bets. Protect your bags, and we'll see you soon. God bless.